Hey everyone, this is Rob Adams in the Abyss. I hope you had a great weekend. This is the Y2K edition, year 2000. A really good group of movies to start off the millennium. And the final two are two of my favorites of all time. So the 2000s really started off strong. On the music side, a really interesting finalist for this year. So looking forward to going through these with you guys. We'll start off, of course, on the movie side. Kind of a goofy comedy road trip. And like some of the other ones we've talked about over the years, some movies you just have to watch for the entertainment value and the idea of it and less for the acting. I do think this is Sean William Scott's probably best film. There's some great one-liners in it, and there's some good banter while they're on the road, and it's once again, like I say a lot, it's a fun comedy, but it's a mindless comedy, and you have to watch it as such. And there's something that I left out, like Best in Show. I get the laughs, and I think it's a lot of fun, but not quite one for me to go over here. Or Bedazzled, which is a remake. A lot of people don't know that was a remake. Dudley Moore was actually in the original, but I think Elizabeth Hurley does a phenomenal job. Brendan Fraser, not his best work, but Elizabeth Hurley as the devil is phenomenal. Another one that I haven't put on the list is Men of Honor. I love the story. I think Cuba Gooding Jr. is terrific in it. But once again, just one that didn't quite make the list. And I know what you're saying, Rob, you just showed us Road Trip and you can't show us Men of Honor. Yeah, because most of us know Men of Honor. A lot of us don't know Road Trip. And like I said, I want to kind of go through some comedies. And remember, when I'm going over these years, there's certain movies that are going to remind me of that year. I remember watching Road Trip when it came out, not in the theater or anything, but like on HBO. And I thought it was funny. And like I said, it's a mindless comedy, so you have to appreciate for what it is. And every once in a while, you're going to get one of those in these groups. Next up, another comedy, Me, Myself, and Irene. Of course, Jim Carrey plays the dual roles, does a really good job. Renee Zellweger as the love interest, and he's really funny. And of course, he has another scene where he fights himself and does that kind of stuff. And I would have to say that nobody has ever done or probably will ever do physical humor the way that Jim Carrey does. Next in line, another John Cusack film with Jack Black, High Fidelity. I like this one. It's not as good as past John Cusacks that we've talked about, but I do like this one because he owns a record store, and I like, once again, like we talked about with Empire Records, it just takes me back to that day of going to the record store and looking for the rare vinyl or the rare single, or just trying to find something new. And this movie gives you a little bit element of that. And then of course in typical John Cusack style. And once again, we talk about actors who had formulas. He had a formula in these days, in the 80s, 90s, and then early 2000s, where it was also a love story connected with what he was doing. And one of the things is, when I listen to John Cusack as a person, he bugs the shit out of me. But as an actor, I enjoy his movies, and he was a huge Clash fan, so you get a lot of Clash in his movies. So that's kind of neat and fun to hear, and which ones he's going to pick for which movies and so on. So like I said, it's in that line of Cusack films. Next up, Nicolas Cage, Tia Leone, The Family Man. He kind of just thinks back to what would have been if he would have stayed and married Tia Leone. And he kind of gets his wish, kind of like It's a Wonderful Life type thing, kind of like other movies where, you think things will turn out different. Mr. Destiny with Michael Caine and Jim Belushi, for example. And he realizes that the business life and making all the money doesn't replace an amazing wife and kids. And any of us who know that feeling, nothing can replace that. There's no money value you can put on that. And they do a really good job together, and it's a cute little story, and it's a fun one to watch. Next up, another kind of romantic comedy, What Women Want. I'm not huge fan of Helen Slater, or Helen Hunt, excuse me, but I think she does a really good job in this. I think she's really strong, does a good job as the rival of Mel Gibson. Not really rival, but kind of a business partner, and he does a really good job. Mel Gibson really knows himself. right? And so it doesn't matter what you put him in. You know, he's going to be honest and truthful, Mel Gibson. And you know, when he does these kind of fun romantic comedies, he does a great job. And of course, in this one, he gets struck by lightning or whatever and is able to hear what women think and kind of gets in their minds and kind of reevaluates the mind of the woman. And it brings up, like I said, it's some good comedic moments, and it's a good, fun, you know, Saturday night romantic comedy. All right, next up, Kevin Bacon, Elizabeth Shue, Hollow Man, you know, 2000s version of The Invisible Man. You know, they're scientists and they're working on this thing, and of course he is the, you know, the head of the group, and so they tested on him, and you know, he can't find a way to come back, and so all of a sudden he just starts getting more and more deranged, like all Invisible Man stories. I actually saw this one in the theater because I do like the Invisible Man story. I think it's a C+ movie. But there's some great elements to it, and there's some good moments and some interesting moments. And once again, Kevin Bacon's another one of those consistent actors. You know what you're going to get with him. Same with Elizabeth Shue. You know what you're going to get with her. And when you have consistent actors and you can watch them work together, it brings a pretty strong relationship to the work, and you know, it makes it worthwhile to watch, and also, you know, to follow the storyline. Another one a lot of people know. But once again, as a music guy, you have to appreciate, you know, Almost Famous. You know, it's an interesting story of a kid who follows a band to write for his, you know, high school paper that turns out that he works it to be in a Rolling Stone article, and they think he's older than what he is. And you know, it's like I said, it's just one of those cool rock and roll stories, and you kind of, you know, they're on tour with Black Sabbath, and you know, they tie in the fiction with the nonfiction, and they have all those different kinds of things going with it. And Kate Hudson does an amazing job. You know, I believe this was her first big film, and she's just great as the groupie. Like I said, it's one of those ones that we all know and stuff like that, and if it's on TV, you'll stop and watch it. You know, it's strong. And Billy Cudrup, I think is how you say his last name, does a really good job as the guitar player. You know, it's funny because when I see him without his mustache and stuff like that, he looks so different in other movies. And it just shows you that sometimes facial hair can just make you look different and seem like, okay, you're a musician here, but then you're a businessman here or whatever. Or, you know, when he's in Mission Impossible or whatever else, you know, it just kind of changes with what he's doing, and, you know, does a good job in this. Another kind of romantic comedy, kind of fun, The Replacements, Keanu Reeves, Gene Hackman once again. And you know what I love about this? I'm not the biggest Keanu Reeves fan, but I remember reading about him actually training to be a quarterback for this. You know, because he wanted to look like he could play the position. And you have to love and respect actors who want as much realism to the role as possible, right? He's not worried so much about the dialogue and the script and all that. He knows he can handle that. He wants to handle playing quarterback naturally, so when they're filming those scenes, you believe he's a quarterback. And he does a good job. Gene Hackman's the coach, is always consistent. You know, it's just now instead of basketball with Hoosiers, he's doing football with The Replacements. Once again, a cool romantic comedy with some fun football stuff in it, and you know, it's one of those ones you haven't seen. You got to watch. It's enjoyable, and as a matter of fact, I might even, you know, watch it this week. I do like this movie a lot. It's an underrated film. Once again, it's not the greatest sports film in the world, but it is pretty strong, at least in my book. All right, shifting gears a little bit. Castaway. You know, when you live believable, you can film a movie on your own pretty much. And this is one of those rare movies that they kind of filmed in time, right? They did the first half, took a year off so he could grow his hair, lose the weight, the whole 9 yards, and then film the second half. And he does an amazing job. And, you know, he makes Wilson come alive. It's just a volleyball. But his interaction and the believability, and of course the way that they cut to the ball reacting, creates a reality. And you really feel that they have a relationship, and it shows you that if you're honest and you have conviction and you mean what you say, you can talk to the wall and the wall will come alive. And that's kind of what he did with Wilson, and he does a really good job in this. I think it was his first big movie after Forrest Gump. I know he did a few other things, but this was, the next, big one in my opinion. And I thought, in order to sit on an island by yourself and carry a film, he did a pretty strong job with this. It's a good film. Next up, Snatch. Jason Statham, Dennis Farina, Brad Pitt. Good, interesting, unique story. Some of the accents are really hard to understand, but once again, it goes back to interactions, relationships, and not so much understanding the words if it works. And of course, the more you watch it, the more you understand, the more you get, the more that they make sense. And it's a pretty fun, strong film. I know some people, it's funny because it's one of those type of movies where either you've seen it and love it, or you've heard of it and haven't seen it yet. I've rarely met someone that has seen it and doesn't like it. It's like I said, it's a pretty good film. So if you have not seen it, you need to give it a shot. Next up, a movie I will watch over and over and over and over again if it's on TV or whatever, and it always surprises people, but I just think it's a really fun story, and I think the kids are terrific in it, and that's Center Stage. Once again, most of these actors were hired because they were dancers. Zoe became a star after this, and Amanda Scholl has done a lot of stuff like Suits and things like that. But for the most part, Ethan Stiefel plays the male lead. He opened up a ballet club for a couple of years down here in Irvine. It's like they were dancers to be in this movie rather than actors trying to learn how to dance. And they do a great job. The ballet is phenomenal. And I'm not a ballet fan, but I just think they did a really strong job. And like I said, the acting's good enough, not great. But for whatever reason, the likability of these young adults draws you in and makes you want to watch the movie. And once again, if it's on, I'm going to watch it. I really do enjoy it. Call me crazy, but it's a pretty good film. All right, next up is one that most of you guys know, love, and that's Gladiator. I mean, Joaquin and Russell Crowe do a phenomenal job. It's a great story, and once again, I like these movies based in periods of time. That's what we're working on in class right now is scripts from different periods of time, and just the different way they spoke and the different words they used, or the different interactions. Or we were watching Psycho the other day here at the house, and my youngest daughter, who's 15, kind of made the comment, because they said we're going to go out and get air. We say get some air or whatever, but they're like, just tell them we're getting air. It's just the way they phrase things, even in 1960, just different periods, and to be able to wear the clothes and do the stuff. I mean, this is what it's all about. And, the famous, all of that is phenomenal. This is where I really recognize Joaquin as a strong actor going forward. Eventually he did other things, of course, and he's done things leading up to this, but this is the movie that really, his eyes and his seriousness and the way he uses Russell Crowe and the way Russell Crowe uses him, it's a really, strong, epic film. It's really good. All right. Meet the Parents. We talked about De Niro the other day where he kind of was starting to make that change. And the idea of who and what he was, we were talking about Analyze This, plays into this. There he is, a mob boss who's trying to deal with his mental state, and here he is as a future father-in-law for Ben Stiller. And, you take who De Niro was through his acting career, and you put that into a movie like this, and the idea of that being your father-in-law is enough to scare the crap out of you. And it works perfect for Ben Stiller's, nervousness and always wanted to please and always falling into the worst case scenarios, and it just plays out perfect in this. And it's a really good fun comedy. Yes, they've made a few sequels afterwards, but nothing stands up to the original. It's really good. Terry Polo as the daughter fiance, she's really strong and does a really good job in using all of this. And it's just, once again, I think all of us have seen it, but it is a really good, strong comedy. All right, so that leaves us to our last two. And very similar to several years ago, I'm going to go with a tie. And the same reason I did with Glory and I did with Harry Met Sally is because they're so different types of movies that I'm going to do the same here, because I really love both of these movies, but they're different genres. And so, I can give them a tie. Plus, this is my segment, so I can give them a tie. So the first one I'm going to go over is The Patriot. Mel Gibson, Revolutionary War, Heath Ledger, Tom Wilkinson as Cornwallis, Jason Isaacs as you know, the redcoat who is kind of the rival to Mel Gibson. Tabington is his name. Does just an amazing job. His eyes are piercing, and he's so strong that you just hope and can't wait that this guy dies. That's how good of an actor Jason Isaacs is in this, man. It's unbelievable. And, you know, once again, give me history, give me Revolutionary War, and put all that stuff together, and the story, and the action, and the, you know, the everything to it. It's just a great epic film. I really love this movie. I love the period, and I think the acting's ridiculously good, and it just makes for such a strong film. Now, the other one, and you may have guessed it, is Remember the Titans. You know, when you got Denzel, you know, enough said. But once again, a true story, and, you know, he gets the job over the other coach who's played by Will Patton, and them end up working together and trying to make, you know, the school with the mixed races work when no other school has tried this or done this yet, and the way that Denzel gets them going, you know, as Coach Boone, and the way that they get this team to buy in and become a family and win and do what they did through all the adversity and all this stuff. It's just an amazing story with amazing acting. So as you can see, you know, a very different type of movie, but also it has its historical value to it. And you know, we always talk in class, especially right now while we're doing these scenes from different periods. You can't really understand what it was like to deal in different periods, whether it be the Revolutionary War or during segregation. You know, we can only assume, or we can only imagine. And when you imagine and you assume, you're guessing. You don't understand. So the best thing we can do as actors is just understand a period of time and learn to deal in that period of time. And that's what people did. People didn't agree with everything. People didn't necessarily have an opinion that was the most popular opinion. But they had to deal because it was a period of time. And as actors, if we understand that, we can make our roles more believable with more conviction and more passion and more energy and all that stuff that comes with it. And that's what you get with Will Patton and Denzel and Remember the Titans. And that's what you get with you know, Mel Gibson, Heath Ledger, Tom Wilkinson, you know, Jason Isaacs and the Patriot. So as you can see, that's why these are a tie. They're both great films, just very different. All right, real fast on the music side, I'm going to start off with Stradivarius Infinite. We talked about Destiny. You know, that was one I discovered in the store. So when this one came out, which was the next one, I went and bought it, you know, because now I'd listen to them. And you have Hunting High or Low, Millennium, Mother Gala, Phoenix. I mean, this is just a really good Glory of the World. It's just really strong. And a little small tidbit for you guys. The artwork was done by Derek Riggs, who did a lot of that Iron Maiden art we looked at through the 80s and such. That's his. And Infinite, you have the dark side and you have the light side. And, you know, it's a super cool album cover. Really good follow-up to Destiny, because I really like that one. And I love this one. Next up is U2. All That You Can't Leave Behind. To me, this is the best modern U2, right? After Achtung Baby, I think some of the stuff they did with, you know, Zooropa and Pop and stuff didn't quite translate and go the way I would like for U2, especially because I loved them so much in the early years. But this was kind of a fall back to that period a little bit. You hear some modern U2, but you also hear a little bit of that classic original rock and roll 80s sound of theirs too, especially with the first, you know, 5 tracks: Beautiful Day, Stuck in the Moment You Can't Get Out of, Elevation, Walk On, and Kite. Just a really great first 5 songs, and then the rest of the album is terrific. But to me, this is the best U2 album since the first 3-4 of them in the early 80s. It's a really good rock and roll modern feel to U2, and it's a good one to check out if you like them. Rush's lead singer, Geddy Lee, his solo album, My Favorite Headache. It's really good. It's a hard one to find. It's out of print. But you probably can find it on Spotify or other things. This is a really, really strong album. And you know what's interesting, when you have vocalists who do a solo album, you hear their sound, especially with a voice like Geddy Lee's of Rush, that you hear that sound, but then you take the musicians and you change it up. It does take in a different direction. Although you do hear a little bit with My Favorite Headache and Working It Perfect, and others, you hear, you know, a little, because of his voice, you hear that Rush feel, but also hear something different and unique. So he wasn't trying to recreate Rush, he was just trying to do his own thing. And you get that with this record. But because of the voice, you also get that other feel too, which makes it, you know, a really, really good solo record. And I recommend checking it out. All right, number 1, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Beethoven's Last Night. They had done a couple Christmas albums because, as we spoke about, that's what they kind of worked toward. This is their first non-Christmas album, and it's basically a fictitious story about Beethoven's last night. And as he's kind of fading away, the devil comes to visit him and offers his soul for his 10th symphony that he's working on. Now, anybody knows about Beethoven, Beethoven did 9 symphonies. So this is like a fictitious 10th symphony that he's working on. And as he's trying to deliberate between, continuing on with life and having his soul or giving up his art, he battles back and forth. And he goes back to his childhood before he was blind, and goes back and remembers when he met Mozart. Because what's starting to happen is he's being told, well, if you give this away, all your other works don't exist anymore. They don't. You can't start now and still have the past. It just erases the past, and then you continue on from where you're at now. So he's going through all this ups and downs, and then when the devil comes to talk to him, the singer for the devil is John Oliva, of course, the singer of Sabotage for many, many years, and that voice and that rasp and stuff, he does a really good job of sounding like the devil. And it's funny because I saw this tour, and they have a narrator who comes out and he kind of narrates between each song, so you kind of get the story being told to you, and then the music in between. And they actually released just a few years ago Beethoven's Last Night, the narrated version, so you get all the music, but then you get the narration with it. So I have both, and it's kind of cool to listen to that and hear the story, but I still appreciate listening to the original and just go with the music. And you get Beethoven's Fifth, and you get different stuff like Mozart, and you get some original tracks, and you get different vocalists singing different parts. Beethoven's voice is one singer, and then, like I said, John Oliva as Lucifer, or Mephistopheles is what they call him in this story, which is one of the devil names. And I would recommend listening to the album and then also reading the story, or if you can find the narrated version, listen to that and listen to the music, because then you can really get the story, because I don't want to ruin it for you. But it's almost like when you saw him on stage, it was almost like it's a live show with music. It's a musical. That's exactly what it is. When the devil comes out, because they're always in tuxedos, Trans-Siberian Orchestra on stage, the devil has a red shirt, everybody else has white. It's little things like that to kind of go, okay, that's Mephistopheles, or whatever. And those are the kind of things that are really cool. So like I said, you're getting a full show in a fictitious, unique story with all this classical influences of Beethoven and Mozart and many more. They do one song with the famous Flight of the Bumblebees. They call it something else, but you get that orchestra involved in it. So you get the instrumentals, but you also get the original tracks, and it's just from start to finish. I was listening to it last night. It just flows and it goes, and it's really, really strong. And you'll enjoy it more if you understand the story. So Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Beethoven's Last Night is number 1 for 2000. And once again, on the movie side, the classic Remember the Titans, and the classic The Patriot. All right, well, there we go. 2000. We are going. I will talk to you guys tomorrow with 2001. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, the like button, comment, do all those different things. I appreciate you watching. We'll see you tomorrow.